Now if it comes across an SSG component, then we need to configure that as well. So it's the same type of thing. I would hit add option. I would do 3/8. Sorry, this is where I'm actually putting the thickness of the glass, because this is really what matches up with the part. I'm sorry, when you add the glass to your elevation, the thickness of the glass will match up to that glazing option thickness, and that's how the system knows to use all those configurations in that parts that we made. So let's see if there's any isolator here. So right, if I'm using isolator here for the SSG, and let's say there's no adapter, and I can actually have screws if it's a kind of an applied screwed on isolator or anything like that, or screwed on adapter, I'm sorry. So in this case, I'm going to name it now 3/8 SSG. And then there's a couple settings down here that are important to know. So I can add to specific vertical and horizontal gasket. So if I want, for some reason, my horizontal glazing gasket or vertical gasket to extend further than the daylight opening, or even be less than it, I can add or subtract values in these fields here. Or if I just need a certain fudge factor for shrinkage for my gasket, I can do a certain amount per foot. So if I need, you know, 1/8 of an inch added per foot for all my gasket, I can do that here. So that's going to make sure I have plenty of gasket when it calculates the required amount. So then the adapters, these are going to be applied. So this adapter here that I put in, and if I did put one in the SSG field, these are going to be cut to the daylight opening size, both horizontally and vertically. So that's good, but if you want, for some reason, the horizontal adapter to extend into the glass pocket a little bit, but not the vertical, because that would kind of butt up against it, then you can tell it, I want to add a 1/4 inch to each horizontal adapter cut. And it's going to basically do that and extend it in to the pockets. So then there's a setting here for the SSG adapter where, and this is for the extrusion, where if it needs to be used in only one instance per member. So basically, if we went back to this SSG vertical detail here, and we see that we have 2 spacer gaskets, that's good. But if there's some kind of adapter that's being used in the frame, and it needs 2 of those, and those are extrusions, then that other setting that we were looking at, let's see, or actually if it only needs 1, so it's going to give you 2 automatically here, but if you only need 1, then you would check this box and it's only going to give you 1 cut of that adapter per usage on the vertical, so, or whatever member it's on. So that's kind of the settings. They're kind of advanced. Vertical adapter runs continuous, so that's if you want. So there's another setting, so not just adding a little bit to the extra, but you could say for each vertical, instead of it just being the daylight opening, you want it to run the full length of the vertical. Now you could always do that in the actual vertical component, but remember the difference here is you might have different parts required for different thicknesses of glass. So with all these different settings, you should be able to calculate not only the cut size of the material, but have, based on the drawing or the DLO, but you can also do a little adding and subtracting to that to dial it in specifically what you need for fabrication or installation. So all those settings are here in this window. And keep in mind that I can just add more of these for 3/16, 1/4 inch, whatever, if it's a 1-inch system. So this is obviously for adding different glass thicknesses to a frame that is standard for a certain thickness. So in our case, this is a 1-inch system. And here we have our 1-inch glass thickness. So another thing to keep in mind is you don't necessarily just have to do this for optional glass. You can do it for the main glass. So I can even put in a 1-inch glazing option that has the gasket material. So remember how I mentioned that in the verticals and jambs here, we're going to get full length gasket cut sizes. So it's going to calculate gasket based on the full cut length of the jamb and the vertical assembly. So if we don't want that and we want it to be actual daylight opening or whatever adjustment we've made, then I can actually add a 1-inch glazing option and just put the gasket in since there's no adapter. And I can also do the setting blocks here. So the setting blocks are kind of easy when they're all the same. Like if we go back to here, we can actually have a per light component. And if the setting block's the same for every light of glass, then I can put them here and say I need 2 of them. But if they're different for the vertical and the horizontal, then I can put certain ones in the horizontal, and I can put, here's the setting blocks for this. So it's got 2 setting blocks for the horizontal, 2 setting blocks for the sill, and in this case they're the same. So they could actually have been put down here in the per light field or component, but it works just the same there. So there's 3 options for setting blocks if you really think about it. We can put them here if they're all the same per light. We can put them in the assembly if they're different for, say, sill than they are for horizontals. And we can also put them in the glazing options. So keep that in mind when you're creating frames or modifying frames. The main reason to use glazing options is if you do realize that you're going to be using different glass thicknesses in a certain elevation. Then when you add the glass, and here's how that works, we're going to go to the glass tab. I actually have some 3/8 glass here that I've added to the job already. And if I say I want this bottom row to be 3/8 glass, I have to do by row, and then I click it. So now when I go back to my elevation tab, it's going to show me the magenta lines wherever actual adapters being used. So if I had an adapter part for the SSG glazing option that I created, then it would show an actual magenta line where these SSG joints are as well. But, or that's not the joint, that's actually the frame member. So the dashed line here is actually the back member, and the SSG joint is this middle space here in between the daylight. Now I've got a different fill pattern set for this glass just so that we see it's different. And the glass tab lets you do that over here. There's a kind of a handful of different fill patterns that we can pick from. So that's why that looks different than standard glass, but it's something you can do. You can also change your glass label, which is right here. You can change that and it would reflect a different label in red. So that's basically what the glazing options is all about. If you want different glass in a frame, it lets you do that with all the different components that are required for it. So that about covers it. Keep an eye out for different videos, and thanks for watching.